Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of Recruit Military Live, and that is the power of networking. We are your co-hosts for the day. I'm Gabby Petticrew. I don't know if I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Torres, I'm sorry, I think I cut
Are
off
you
there for a second.
No, you're good. I was like freaking out thinking it was mine for a second. As we mentioned, we are your co-host for the day, and we are some new faces to the RM Live session. So we wanted to do some quick introductions. Again, my name is Gabby, and I am a communications coordinator with Recruit Military. I've been on the team for a little over a year now, and it's been phenomenal. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. Spontaneously made the decision immediately after graduating high school to join the Marine Corps and spent just under 10 years as a communications, public affairs, journalist, marketing coordinator in the Marine Corps. Went to Paris Island, of course, at that time all females did in the Marine Corps, which honestly is where the real Marines are made. We all know that. Just kidding, no, all my Pendleton Marines and San Diego Marines out there. After graduating, did a year in Maryland for the schoolhouse. Then after that, kind of was stationed a little bit, sprinkled throughout the country, spent 2 years back in South Carolina, Beaufort area, transitioned to Houston, Texas for 3 years, and then made my way to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, which is where I spent the last 3 years of my active duty service, and then transitioned out of the Marine Corps in November of 2019. And then now I found my way back in the beautiful land of Phoenix, Arizona. And that's a little bit about me. How about yourself, Raul?
So my name is Raul. I'm a marketing coordinator and event director, of course, with Recruit Military. And I joined the Marine Corps in 2016, spent 5 years as a public affairs Marine. A little background on that. I saw my cousin graduate in high school while I was in high school. So he kind of came back standing a little taller, probably changed his demeanor a little bit. You can tell he'd grown up some. And that stayed with me throughout college, graduated, came back, and lo and behold, guess who was a recruiter in my city? So I ended up joining the Marines. And that to me was highlighted, I think, by 8-month deployment to Norway. And part of that was cold weather training, or a lot of part of that. We were in Norway. Who am I kidding? And I think that was highlighted by probably us getting paid, or at least it felt like we were getting paid to ski for 2 weeks. I didn't know how to ski. A lot of the guys did, but I got paid to ski for 2 weeks. So I finished. That was kind of my time in the fleet. I finished up my time in Camp Lejeune with Gabby. Went over to Recruiting Station Baltimore as a marketing chief out there. And I feel like that role really helped me build my skills and resume for a great transition. Out there, I was able to do a lot of the marketing pieces, including social media, including training the recruiters on social media. I wasn't recruiting myself. And that's something I find that is kind of rare. Not rare, but it doesn't happen too often, where you're in a role in the military and that kind of directly translate into hard skills, into whatever role you're doing outside of the military after you transition. And I got to say, my transition experience was probably a little different than yours, Gabby. I don't know. I EAS during the pandemic, and I know you transitioned out pre-COVID. So I wanted to pass it along to you to see how that was for you.
Yeah, no, really, it's definitely, when I say the power of networking is a topic for today, and that's definitely the basis of my entire transition process. So I actually got out of the Marine Corps in November of 2019, about 3 months after having my second child, my son. And that was November of 19. And little did I know COVID was going to be right around the corner, 4 or 5 months later. So while I EAS'd prior to the COVID, the pandemic, the shutdown of everything, I had already made the decision that I was going to enjoy the next 3 to 4 months, go into the new year, not worrying about job hunting. But then once January, February came around, that angst in me was like, okay, I got to get back into, like, it's the civilian side, no longer, an active duty Marine, got to get back on the job hunt journey. And that was right when we started to hear rumors of the pandemic and things starting to shut down. And so my job search process was not too fruitful at the time. But again, the power of networking, about a few months after my son was born, we went and did family portraits, and the photographer in the North Carolina area that took our photos, she actually was a prior public affairs Marine, maybe gotten out 5 years prior to me. And we connected, we talked, connected over all of the Marine Corps jargon and started telling stories. Oh, where were you stationed as a public affairs Marine? What did you do? Did you do marketing and public affairs? Were you an MPA as well? And kept in contact. And she had mentioned that she was a contractor on base on Camp Lejeune and, loved the position. And she, would put in a good word for me if anything ever came up. Lo and behold, right around February, March of the beginning of COVID pandemic, she actually was transitioning to Texas and couldn't keep the position, and it was going to become open. So she by name referred me to her manager, to her boss. And that led to me, doing the interviews, but getting that first foot in the door, getting that connection made. And by April, I started my job, which April, if you guys remember, was like everything was shutting down. Like the only thing open were grocery stores. Like there were curfews, the mask was, in full everything. So the fact that I was able to lock on that position just because I had a conversation with someone and just asking someone about their story and them asking me about my personal journey. That's all it took in order to keep my name in the forefront of her mind when it came to that position. And soon after that, I found myself wanting to come back to my home state. All of my family is here in the Phoenix area. So I made my transition about a year and a half later out here. Once they let me finish out the contract, it actually extended it for a bit, but I finished that contract near the end of 2021. And I was back in that same boat where I was like, okay, we're still kind of in like that pandemic state where the market isn't exactly great. There aren't the best jobs for what I'm looking for my passion in life in my area. Like I went on interviews, I submitted all of the countless resumes to all of the job sites, and I did interviews, but nothing was sticking. And it just so happened that I was like, you know what, I haven't touched in years? My LinkedIn. So logged into that LinkedIn account that was stagnant for quite a while. Updated my information, updated, a new headshot that I took as a selfie on my iPhone, just made it look super professional. And, updated my contacts, was seeing who I had mutual contacts with, all of that. And then it just so happened, I literally was sitting on the couch. I remember the moment, scrolling and seeing one of my favorite Marines, Mr. Raul Torres, share a job listing from RecruitMilitary, which is the position I have now. True and when story. I tell you, I don't know about anyone else out there, but I suffer severely at times from imposter syndrome. So when I saw this posting, there were already like 12 likes on the job listing he shared. There are already people that commented that said, oh, I'm throwing my name, my hat in the ring, like I'm throwing my name in the bucket, like I just applied. And I'm like, you go and you creep on their profile and you're like, this guy has a lot of qualifications that I don't have. And when I'm like, what, I pushed that imposter syndrome to the side and I was like, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, right? And I'm like, I'm in no position to turn down a good opportunity. So, read the job description, thought I, could bring something to the table. And then I would say less than a week later, I was on the phone doing back-to-back interviews, face-to-face virtual interviews, and got the position. I actually got the call, which is another, great thing about RecruitMilitary. They didn't leave me. That was around Christmas timeframe that I was doing that interview. And it was the 23rd or 24th of December. And I had been told, through email, like, hey, thank you for, all your hard work in your interview, staying strong through the interview process. A lot of our main deciders are on PTO. Understandably, it was, Christmas Eve timeframe. And, after the new year, we should be coming back with a solid decision. And I got the call on Christmas Eve that I had gotten the position. And I was like, so if that doesn't say a lot of things, they didn't leave me hanging and joining the new year with anxiety looming over my head. It was the best best gift I could have been given that Christmas. I celebrated with myself and my two children. So It was phenomenal. And now I get to work on the same amazing team again. The power of networking with one of my favorite Marines that I served with at my last unit, Mr. Raul Torres. How was that? I know you said you made that transition in the midst of COVID. So I had the opportunity I just missed it and had something locked on at the beginning of it. But how was it for you to do it with that stress of knowing what the market was like at that time?
Yes. So first I'm teasing on this end because I'm remembering you like telling me through LinkedIn, hey, by the way, I applied and I already like had my first interview. And I almost lost it because I'm like, I could have reached out to whoever was interviewing you to put in a good word.
It's one of those things we don't feel like we need a handout. You know, us Marines, us veterans, we're very like, no, I can do it myself. I don't need anyone to like do the hard work for me. Like I want to feel like I earned this myself. So I wanted to throw my hat in the ring, officially apply, and then let you know, like, hey, brother, I'm trying for it. Thanks for posting.
Yeah. And for all you tuning in, I reached out to the first interviewer that Gabby went with, and she already had it in the bag. I didn't have to say a word. So as far as like handouts and whatnot, you already stood out before they even knew, we had to work together. So that's why I'm smiling. I'm like, man, if you have an in, for those of you tuning in, if you have an in somewhere, make sure to utilize that 1,000%, even if, your leagues above, at least in your mind, above like other people applying to the job.
Exactly.
But Gabby, you had it down pat without even my help. So.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely don't be stubborn and hard-headed like me and like ignore your networking. Like, make sure you still continue to make those connections and reach out to people just to let them know, because you never know how that could help you, getting a good word put in for you, having someone who knows your work ethic firsthand, seeing it in person, having someone relay that to whoever the hiring manager is, putting in that good word could be the thing that sets you apart from another candidate.
It absolutely does. And to answer your question about like my transition, it was a little bit short of I wouldn't say nightmare, but there was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of worrying, just because no one in the world knew what exactly was going on. I would call around. I was doing informational interviews, and the only thing I was hearing was, hey, we have a hiring freeze, but we'll keep your resume in case something comes up. And that was the theme with every company. Like no one was hiring at all. If anything, they were laying people off during that time. So, I was very, very nervous. But at that time, I wanted to do, or at least I thought I wanted to do, sports marketing. And I found out again through informational interviews, it was long hours and little pay to start, right? And I found that through networking. And my story is I found some networking resources, including some of our partners at RecruitMilitary, ACP, which is American Corporate Partners. It was like a 12-month mentorship, and it was with like a member or an employee from like a Fortune 500 company, which was fantastic. And then Veterati, which was like kind of more of an a la carte kind of mentorship. Like you get to pick and choose who you want to talk to in whatever industry you're trying to transition to. Or if you're a veteran, it's also good if you're trying to break into another industry. So I found that very useful. And I got to say, what opened my eyes to networking was my ACP partnership with Lauren, with Hearst. Lauren, if you're listening, shout out to you. Thank you so much. That really changed everything for me. It kind of really opened my eyes to like, hey, if you're trying to get a job and you're just doing it by yourself, you're just putting in and applying to positions out there without talking to anyone, there might be 1,000, plus people applying to that one position, depending how popular it is. Like it could be really competitive, and you need every edge you can get. And the way you do that is by having an in and making sure, if I apply to RecruitMilitary and I know Raul, I'm going to reach out to him and let him know, hey, I'm gunning for this job. And Lauren was the person that kind of, again, opened my eyes to networking. I learned the importance of informational interviews from her. So she worked at Hearst. She had an internal marketing position, which wasn't sports marketing at all. But, she had access to individuals and got me informational interviews virtually at the time because of COVID, with someone that worked with Twitter, that worked with sports in their sports department, the Eagles, the Washington Commanders, the Washington Nationals, even the NBA league office. And I promise you, I would not have been able to make those connections. I didn't even know who these people were until Lauren introduced me. So that kind of just tells you, like, hey, this individual can lead you to that individual who can lead you to possibly your next job. So you do not know where that opportunity will come from. And it's just as important, or it's more important to leverage those networks, just because there's something called like a hidden job market, right? So a lot of jobs maybe aren't posted, they're internal, and you have to have that in order to know what exactly is going on, right? So if the job that Gabby applied for wasn't external, and when I posted it first, I posted it on LinkedIn thinking of Gabby. I don't know if I told you that before. I actually saw that. I'm like, PR and social media.
No idea.
Yes, I promise you, I posted that, and I'm like, yep, this could be Gabby for sure. And look how it turned out. But that hidden job market, can only be accessed through who you know. Mm-hmm. And that's where your access to those individuals and their networks can really, really, really be a plus. But that was my experience. Gabby, I don't know how much further like your branches of networking have taken you. I know you touched a little bit about that, but I think it is super important.
It's absolutely crucial. I mean, even for me, half the time networking feels just like staying in touch with your friends, because I'm that type of like social butterfly type of person. So when I catch up with people who happen just to be phenomenal professionals in their craft, it's just me being like, hey, hey brother, or hey girl, how have you been? Like, how's life treating you? Just having those daily, weekly, even monthly. For veterans, like Raul and I didn't talk for a years probably, like had a good conversation. I think we have each other on social media, but he's not the most active person on social media either. So it's like, when I like catching up with him was like, I have no idea how your life is, like, so it's just having, for me, the networking is rooted in having those conversations and keeping the conversation going, because you never know with those conversations, that random piece of like little information about your life will remain with someone. And you were like, hey, I remembered that she said she was really wanting to get her foot in the door with recruiting. And we have, like a recruiting starting position coming up. Like, I remember she's like a phenomenal person. Work ethic is awesome. Great personality. Let me reach out to her. That type of conversation with people. And it's really funny. We already know that the military and veterans, that network of individuals is already kind of a small world. And then you split it up into specific branches, even smaller. But many of at least 2 or 3 employers that we host at our job fairs, career fairs, I served with as an MPA. They were recruiters. They are now civilian recruiters for the organizations, the companies they work for. But I've seen them. I spent 3 years with them in Houston, Texas. And I was like, remember when we were going to high schools trying to recruit people to join the military? And I was there taking all your pictures, and you were there just honestly hating the recruiting life, because I feel like anyone that is a recruiter, worked with recruiters, they know the ups and downs of recruiting. So remember when we were going through that 3-year struggle together? But it was honestly one of my, I think you mentioned, Raul, being an MPA, marketing and public affairs Marine. For people who aren't familiar with kind of that role, we're the only public affairs representative for an entire recruiting station, Marine Corps recruiting station in our case, which can vary anywhere between 80 to like 150 Marines, depending on your location. I was in Houston, Texas, so it was, I think, over the 100 amount of Marines. And it was very daunting because at the time, I don't know how it is now, but at the time they were sending E4s, maybe an E5 if you were lucky to fill that role. So this is like an executive director role that we were filling. At least for me, I was 21. So, and it's kind of being like thrown into the deep end. And if you can't swim, you're going to sink. But if you can't swim, you either learn how to swim and make it or sink. And it definitely molded my work ethic and laid the path for how I adapted to any other role that I was given, especially once I became a staff NCO and was now a chief and at that managerial position. I was like, oh, I did this as a 21-year-old. I was telling, as an E4, I was telling E9s what they should and shouldn't do. I was having media interviews. I was setting up events, as an event coordinator. I was traveling 300 miles back and forth because within each recruiting station, you can have like 12, 16 various substations. And Houston, Texas, there was a lot of stations, a lot of schools. So knowing that I had that in my back pocket, and that was able to transition to any other role that I felt, any other role after MPA was very easy. It paled in comparison. I was very used to the go, 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 don't stop. Like, what do I have to do next? Running to the next meeting, getting in my government vehicle and going down the freeway to whatever event I had to go to next. So once I transitioned back to the fleet and things were mellow and I had to look for work to give my Marines for stories, I'm like, this is going to take some adjustment, but I welcome it for sure. But really that's would be my biggest piece of advice is continue having those conversations with people. Don't go into the networking world with just the idea of, oh, I need to do this because it's going to, serve me in some professional capacity later down the road. That's just a very technical way of thinking about it. Even if you're not the most social person, I know not everyone loves to reach out to people. I'm not always that way either. Sometimes I just go in like back into my little introvert crab shell and just need leave me alone, please, and let me recharge. But other than that, I'm usually a social person. So, reaching out to people, checking in, seeing how their well-being is doing, making sure that their 2023 is treating them good so far because it's been an insanely busy year. Keeping those conversations alive, keeping those networks alive. It's like a garden, right? You need to continue maintenance and watering in order to grow those relationships. Very cheesy reference right there. I did not mean to reference us as a garden. We didn't come to a rose garden, right? And here I am. But that's the biggest piece for me, I would say, is continue having those conversations because you never know. We're just making a friendship, a really quick connection over a portrait session with your family will secure your next, meaningful career position. So that's the biggest piece for me.
Yeah, you mentioned you were 21 on MPA on marketing duty for the Marines. I was already bald, right? So all of that stress, there's only so much more I can go down from there. But marketing duty really did remind me, or I kind of feel like I'm doing a lot of the same work with RecruitMilitary today. And I mean, today as an event director, I'm able to go out to the job fairs. In case, for those of you tuning in, if you don't already know, RecruitMilitary, we host job fairs all around the nation, virtual and in person. I'm an event director for in-person events. And something that I tell job seekers all the time in our little, motivational little kickoff speech before the event kicks off at the time is to make sure you take advantage of networking at our events. And I say that because at our events, we have a lot of company representatives that are veterans themselves. And a few of them have actually gone to our job fairs prior to that position and gotten a job or, networked themselves. So that just gives you an idea of the feeling, the environment at our job fairs as far as veterans talking to veterans who are now in positions of power to empower the job seeker, veteran or spouse or anyone within the military community as we serve. And that just goes to show, again, talk to everyone, tell your story, and make that journey stand out, because you don't know who's a veteran advocate out there. You need to seek them out, whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's in person, whether that's your neighbors in your community. Networking is very important. You just don't know what you don't know until you ask and find out. Again, like, hey, this person's a veteran, and they work for RecruitMilitary, and they possibly have an angle, or maybe, hey, this person is a veteran and I know him personally, and RecruitMilitary has over 60,000 employer partners. Just maybe that person might be able to get me to the next person who's in a position to hire veterans, or someone, or have a position for someone within the military community. So absolutely, speak to everyone, tell them your story. You don't know who's a veteran. People are out there advocating for those within the military community. Please be sure to network and branch out and tell your story. But with that being said, Gabby, I don't know, is it time to wrap up yet? I think we've really pounded on the power of networking, and just getting out there, and whether that's social media, or at job fairs, or at events, or veterans, or just knowing veterans in person. Make sure to get out there. And with that being said, I do have 3 tips to kind of wrap up what we talked about today. And that's 1, RecruitMilitary has events. So make sure you attend those job fairs. Make sure to find out if there's one in your area. And if not, we have virtual career fairs in between as well, which can supplement that. And 2, we actually have a webinar, and it goes on about two times a month, that talks about resumes, which we'll cover in our episode next month. And that'll allow you to network with your mentor a little better. Again, whether that's ACP, or American Corporate Partners, or Veterati. So make sure to network. That's huge. And then LinkedIn, which is something Gabby can talk about as well, because she brought it up. There's definitely a place for that social media piece of networking. Like the potential there is endless.
You literally have an entire network, a whole world of people who have been in your position, who know the struggles you're enduring, and who may have the connections that you need to change your life, to quite literally change your life, because that's a job is, takes up, your 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then even more of that possibly. You have all of that at your fingertips, and LinkedIn is probably one of the best areas. I mean, I'm living proof of that, of what a simple 2-minute scroll down my LinkedIn timeline did for me. Here I am having a job where I'm able to still be an amazing mom and take care of my children, while feeling that sense of purpose and passion and mission that I was missing after I left the Marine Corps. And look where I am now, because I saw a LinkedIn post. So continue reviving and freshening your LinkedIn connections. Have those conversations, whether you're a social butterfly or not. Have those conversations, because you never know what could come from them. And as a reminder, before we hop off here for our next RecruitMilitary Live session, Lucas Connolly and Chris Newsom will be speaking about the career fair success, making every handshake count. That will be March 29th. Make sure you tune in for that. These are like phenomenal gentlemen who have so much knowledge about how to work those career fairs in your favor, how to leave a lasting impression, how to make a difference. But besides that, Raul, do you have anything else for the amazing people of LinkedIn world?
No, but I will say, so Lucas and Chris are next week, but next month we will be covering resumes and kind of our experience with that. And again, we do have a webinar that covers resumes today. It's not today, but if you go on recruitmilitary.com/event prep, you'll be able to see that there. in preparation for our next episode. But thank you all so much for joining. We're glad to be here sharing our insight with you all.
Thank you.